From the blood-soaked waste, the angelic Primarch Sanguinius guides.
that was all a little much, I think, wasn't it? So today we're painting up a blood angel, specifically Brother Aramus here. Look at this cool baseball card. Also comes with some instructions that I'll probably throw away. And now we're going to do a little clipping. Remember to always keep the flat side of your nippers towards the model you're cutting out. There we go. There's all the pieces broken out. The file I used for cleanup is just a half round file, just a cheap one I got from Harbor Freight in a little set. But it's my favorite one. It's got a flat side and a round side, so multi-purpose is always nice. Just a handy little tool for cleaning up all these burrs and mold lines. Time for assembly. These are the easy to assemble pieces, but I still glue them. Oftentimes the fit on these things is not exactly perfect, so if you're using glue, I'm using Tamiya extra thin plastic cement. Feel free to clip off any of those little assembly nubs and bobs if you think you can get away with it. They're a great guide for new painters and assemblers, but they can also kind of get in the way sometimes, so I like to clip them off. Alright, we've got the pieces separated out here for painting. Got the head, body, and shield. I'm starting out with some Vallejo black airbrush primer. I'm just putting a nice thin coat down. I don't use a fancy airbrush. I just use one of the cheap ones from Amazon. And for what I do, it's great. I pretty much just use my airbrush to prime, and it's perfect for that. Now that I've said that, I'm actually running some MEPHISTON red through there now, just to get a base coat down. I use just normal MEPHISTON red out of the normal Citadel pot, and I just thin it down with some airbrush thinner. Okay, with our coat of MEPHISTON red down, I'm going to start out with some Blood Angels Red contrast paint. I'm just going to cover the whole model here. Making sure that once I get the whole model coated, that you pull up any areas where you see the paint pooling. Contrast paint, at least where I live in the temperature and humidity, it dries up pretty quickly, so get those pools lifted up a little earlier than later, because you don't want a water ring. I'm gonna go ahead and put a black base coat on the base, just to make it a little easier later on, so I'm not trying to pick those details out once I attach Brother Aramus to the base. And it's a snug fit, and I probably shouldn't be touching them with my grubby little fingers, but you gotta get them on there somehow, so there we go. Alright, not looking too bad already. Okay, so let's get into the armor details. For this I'm using KHORNE red, MEPHISTON red, and Wild Rider red. You'll see on my wet palette over there I've got some LAHM medium 2 kind of in between the paints. That way I can just mix them how I need without contaminating it too much. I'm putting really thin coats here down, just a glaze essentially, this KHORNE red, and I'm just pulling it towards the bottom edges of the model, anywhere where it's going to be a little darker due to shadows and just the way that light works normally is the areas that are farthest away from your eye are going to appear the darkest. The good thing about glazes too is they don't make drastic changes in the color because they're so thin, so don't be afraid to put them on and adjust accordingly. I do that constantly when I paint, because a lot of painting is just kind of feeling it out at first, seeing what looks good to the eye, maybe not necessarily what's realistic, but may look good. So You're not in too deep when you're using glazes. Next up, I'm mixing up some MEPHISTON red with the medium. And I'm going to start working on the higher areas of the model. You can see there how thin this is. It's going to take a lot of layers to build up some color, but that's fine. That's how we get nice smooth coats. Alright, let's make a little light line down this guy's leg. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start pulling the paint towards the area that I want to be the brightest. And for a line down a cylinder, I like doing it this way. I'll pull some from one side and then I'll pull from the other side and kind of meet in the middle. That way we get a consolidation of pigment right where we want it. So how are you guys doing out there? I know it's kind of a stressful time, but I hope you're doing all right. Okay, with this first glaze laid down, I'm going to start working a little more pigment heavy here. I'm using the MEPHISTON red, and you can see there it's not quite full layer thickness, but pretty close. I'm just going to work on tighter areas towards the top of the model, areas where light's going to really be hitting hard. The easy way to figure these areas out is if you look straight down on your model. Any spot that you see is going to be a good area to hit with your brighter colors, because that's going to be one area that light's almost certainly going to be affecting. On highlights here too, you'll see that I pull them out towards the edge or towards the top of a piece of the model, just wherever I want that color to be most intense. People don't really realize it, but where you pull your brush off of the model is generally where you have the highest pigment consolidation. Okay, coming in with some Wild Rider red, nice and thin. We're going to hit the same areas as we did before. Again, you'll notice I'm just pulling it out towards the edges, because I really want the edges of this stuff to pop before I even mess with any edge highlighting. Alright, you can see there now the color transition is looking pretty okay. Alright, let's get into lining up some metallics. First step that I always do before putting any metallics on is base coat in black. I think it just gives a cool base for any metal pigment that you're using. First, let's do some recess shading. I'm using COELIA GREENSHADE for this. It goes perfect with red paint. I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but it just works. So I'm picking out the deeper areas of the model. Any recesses that I can get into, I'm just putting a little thin line of shade there. That really helps that model pop. Okay, I'm going to come in with some HRAITHBONE here on the oath papers. And I don't really show this later, but essentially all I do, I just come back with some skeleton horde contrast for those papers, and it looks great. Onto the face, we're using Bugman's Glow. Faces are something that I'm still getting used to and still working on. And you know, any of this painting process or any endeavor in general, you have to pump some time into before you get good at it. And you'll see here, I'm putting some HRAITHBONE down on his teeth. Most of it ends up on his lips, but the main thing I'm trying to avoid is getting a big mouthful of paint. That can be really hard to fix. But if it's on the lips, you can just coat it with some more Bugman's Glow and fix it up here. Concentrate hard now, we're doing the eyes. This is another one where I just try to get as close as possible. I do orient the head where the longest part of the eye is lined up directly in line with my brush. And I just go back and do a little bit of cleaning up. So I'm hitting some of the higher areas here on the face with some KISLEV flesh mixed with Bugman's Glow, just to brighten those areas up, like the nose and the cheekbones, forehead, that sort of stuff. On the lens, I start with Fire Dragon Bright, and I coat the whole side of the rim there. Now we're coming back with KISLEV flesh. I know I'm jumping around here a little bit, so apologies about that. But that's kind of how I paint. Alright, MEPHISTON Red. Just going to put a single dot in the middle there. That gives kind of a glowy effect. We'll touch on this later to really make that pop. Next up, I'm using ESHIN Gray to highlight the black. Just his little Vox headset there. And kind of his cybernetic head plate. I'm just going to edge highlight that with some gray. Okay, so not looking too bad. And he's even got a head on his shoulders now. Alright, so I'm going to do a little dab of Fire Dragon Bright on this eyepiece here. And you can see I've got a few little white dots added on too, just to represent lens flare. Back to Wild Rider Red here. I'm just going to do a little bit of edge highlighting. I'm going to hit the bottom parts of these scars on the armor and just some of the sharper edges. For the metal parts, I use gunmetal from Vallejo. I really think I like LEADBELCHER a little better. It's a little darker, but this works too. I just had to put an extra coat of Nuln Oil on it. And some of these areas you'll notice too, I kind of change up as the video goes along. If you paint an area that you don't like, don't be afraid to mix it up or try to go over it or change it up. You got to be kind of brave in certain situations where, you know, nothing's permanent on these models. Even if you do screw up a nice job, you can always strip it back down and start again. Worst comes to worst, you learn something out of the ordeal. Okay, so I'm just using some black wash here on all the metallic parts to kind of bring that sharpness down. And I use BALTHASAR gold on the skulls and the ribbons and Aquila feathers and all that stuff. Nothing fancy here, just good old-fashioned base coat. Putting on metallic paints is really relaxing to me. I'm not sure why. I think just because of the shimmer and the way they flow when once you get them thinned out real nice. Alright, so I'm doing a little cleanup here. I'm going to go back and cover up some of these tubes and hoses with just black paint. I should have done my planning on the front side a little better, but hey, we're just having fun, right? Okay, so I'm going to put some flesh wash on this gold. It's just going to give it more of a reddish tint. I believe I come back with some Nuln Oil later too on there, but I'm not sure I show it. Alright, so to finish the highlights on the lenses, I just put a little dash of Flash GITZ yellow there in the corners. Alright, let's brighten up that gold a little bit. I use Vallejo Glorious Gold. I'm not sure what the Games Workshop equivalent of that's called. But you just want to hit the high points here just to help add a little contrast to your gold areas. You'll see how it'll make these pieces pop. Alright, time to do some masonry work. I'm just going to paint these tiles with HRAITHBONE. And I'm going to hit the metal studs in the ground with LEADBELCHER. The metal beams, rather. Alright, so I didn't record all of this on the base, but I used HACRAGGE blue and ALTDORF blue, I believe, to highlight on these tiles, just to give them a little bit of depth. On the rocks and rubble that you see around, I just painted that gray and used some black wash and some ACRAGGE there. Okay, for dry brushing, I just used my wife's some of her old makeup brushes. And the key to dry brushing is just getting most of the paint off your brush before you actually touch it to a model. I generally try to only dry brush in certain directions too, just so the edges pick up the highlights where I want them to, and there's not highlights in weird spots. Finally, I'm just going to use some ESHIN gray to base it up, and that's about it, guys. So there's Brother Aramus in all his glory, ready to go smash some Xeno scum with his band hammer. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys. Hope you'll consider subscribing, liking, sharing, all that jazz. Remember, be cool, be kind, be yourself, and we'll catch you later.